Welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly produced by Ravens Recruitment, the experts in pharmacy career and locum services for over 30 years. Every episode is your gateway to new opportunities in the pharmacy profession. From expert advice to inspiring success stories, we're here to spark ideas, guide your career, and help you achieve your goals. Stay tuned. The next step in your pharmacy journey starts here.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I'm your host as usual, Christy Lee Patterson, and today I am joined by a dynamic and multi-skilled pharmacist whose career spans medication reviews, education, locuming, and advocacy, as well as probably many other things as well. Mitchell Everlyn, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Now, Mitchell, is it okay if I call you Mitch for the purpose of this podcast?
Yeah, I much prefer that actually. Even in the academic setting, I really don't like the titles. So please, Mitch is completely fine.
Excellent, perfect. So, Mitch, let's start with the early days. What first drew you into becoming a pharmacist or pursuing a career in pharmacy?
Of course. So for this question, we're going to have to rewind about 20 years. I know I don't look or sound that old despite my voice. Let's rewind a little bit. So one of my favourite stories I like to tell people that sort of drew me into pharmacy as a profession. So when I was growing up, my dad had cancer. Not a good time. And it's very hard to watch that as you're growing up as a young person. So I remember very distinctly, I was 13 years old, and Dad was getting chemotherapy treatment in a very small hospital just to the west of Brisbane. Very small little hospital. And for some reason, I went into chemotherapy with him one day. It was a Wednesday, so I'm not really too sure why I missed school just to go to chemotherapy with him, but that's okay. And because it was a private hospital, there was, people from overseas, there was people whose hair was falling out at that point in time. And it's very much like the typical chemotherapy ward you would see back about 20 years ago. And being a child, being 13, I brought a pack of cards. So for somehow and some reason, I managed to set everyone up in the room. So there was about 6 or 7 of us. And everyone, there was still chemotherapy hooked up to IV, all of that sort of stuff. And we managed to set everyone up in a circle just to play together. And you have this really amazing moment. I remember very distinctly being a 13-year-old with a little old lady sitting next to me. Her hair's falling out. You could hear the chemo pump going through. And you have a draw 4 in your hand. And you have that amazing decision to make. It's just like, what are you going to do? She's already in pain. Do you win the game with the draw 4, or do you let it go for another round and see how you go? But that's small moment inspired me to join the healthcare profession. That small moment's just like, we can look at drugs doing so much. We can look at 4 grams of paracetamol a day can help with pain. Yet we can look at, milligrams or micrograms of chemotherapy to actually help with help with cancer. So it's the biology, it's the chemistry behind it, but it's also the people. It's the healthcare. It's actually treating people as individuals. So that's why I chose pharmacy.
Wow, I love that story. It's a heartwarming story, but it is also, I guess, a bit of a sad story as well for you, having to go through that at such a young age and to see your dad go through that. And yes, so many questions, being a 13-year-old going to a chemo with your dad on a Wednesday. But you know what? It sounds like you've got a fond memory of that, which is nice. And please tell me you didn't put the draw 4 down with that.
Of course I did. Of course. You're a 13-year-old. You have to win somehow. It's all about winning.
Good. Yeah. I wouldn't expect anything less. I love it. Now, you also just mentioned that the biology and the chemistry part fascinated you, and especially, how do medicines work? Do you remember from a young age that that's something that always fascinated you? And do you think that's because maybe you were around medicines a lot because of what was happening with your dad?
Definitely towards the later years in high schools, around medicines a lot more just because of what was happening at home. I think I just naturally drifted more towards science growing up. I was just naturally better at it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how if you do A with B, you get C. I just enjoyed the logic of science rather than having a theoretical conversation about Shakespeare 500 years ago.
Yes.
I just found that slightly boring. And then, of course, growing up in that environment, you're naturally better at chemistry and biology because you do that in your spare time. You're doing that at home anyway.
Oh, that's exactly right. I also know that you grew up in a rural area, so town of Bundaberg. I also feel that has probably impacted you, both your career and probably your life as well. And do you think that that's had an impact on you leading into your career with pharmacy?
Yes and no. Ironically, so my family has a farm just outside Bundaberg. So we have a house at Woodgate, which is near the beach, and then a farm, Cadalba. And it was really ironic. The day I actually got the offer to be accepted into pharmacy, it was a 45-degree day on the farm, and my job that day was pick up sticks.
Literally picking up sticks.
It's the highlight of my career as a farmer, right? And I went to my uncle. I'm just like, Uncle, what do you think I should do? And he said, Mitchie, do you want to stand out here on the hot sun all day for the rest of your life? Or do you want to stand in an air-conditioned office? I'm like, all right, sign me up. Let's go. So like you have a very basic understanding of like, chemistry to a much broader aspect on the farm. But at the same time, it's helping those people. It's helping the rural environment. It's being able to talk to those people, and I'm very grateful to have that upbringing as well. Like as much as we can talk about receptors and bonding sites and protein affinity and all of that sort of stuff, it's being able to help the farmer who walks into the pharmacy who's going to be like, what's this drug actually going to do? What happens if I don't take it every day? It's creating a much broader conversation where we can help more people in a much different light.
That's so true, especially when you ask that question. What happens if I don't take this? I grew up on a property as well, and so it's pretty hard trying to get any sort of, especially males that are out on the farm that live on the land, to take anything. So I think my dad was using like eye drops that I couldn't even tell what they were anymore. He's like, can you get me another one of these eye drops? They're amazing. I'm like, I don't even know what they are.
Yeah. It's a super different conversation. It's not like unless something's actively wrong and you can't actively go to work, which is a rare case in those environments. It's just like, what do you do? And how can we help that farmer who comes in? Like if they actively come in, something is actively wrong. So what can we do for those people?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, if they've actually even bothered to come into the pharmacy, like that's pretty massive, really, if they've actually made it all the way into that pharmacy. Now, if I fast forward maybe just a little bit of, so you've gone to university, you've done your degree, and just 1 month into becoming a pharmacist. This is pretty wild. You got asked to return and come back and teach. So can you tell me a little bit about, that experience? Like, wow, that must be, I don't think that's something that happens very often.
Super privileged to be in that position. Thankfully, I was in Canada to celebrate finishing my internship, and I got an email while I was over there to be like, hey, Mitch, like we really liked you doing like your honours project and your majors project. Can you come back and do like one guest lecture for us? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can talk about whatever you want me to talk about. I can, talk in front of people. That's completely fine. So I get there and I start teaching, and then they're like, oh, you're actually pretty good at this. Do you want to do some more? So that was at UQ when I first started, and then one thing led to another, and then within another month or two, I was teaching at QUT at the same time, which is pretty exciting. So I was in this very rare position where they just needed people desperately. So despite only being registered for a month or 2 months at that point in time, they're like, yeah, come back and teach. What do you want to teach? Yeah, literally whatever you want. I'm like, I have zero skills and I know nothing about life. And they're like, no, you'll be fine. You're registered. I'm like, that's not really how life works, but that's completely okay.
But I love that, just that humility that you have. You're like, oh, this is just who I am and this is what I can bring to the table. But I think, like, if I think back to when I was a student, I really related to the lecturers that were just open and honest with what they know and what they don't know, but then also have that real world experience as well. And so were you still working like in a pharmacy as well at this time, or did you just go straight into 100% academia?
No. So I was like working in a community pharmacy as well. So I was like community pharmacy 4 or 5 days a week and teaching 1 or 2 days, as well as all the online stuff. But I really liked your point before about saying like just the relatability to people in the real world. So even my recent teaching UNE, like last week, for example, it's great teaching alongside professors of pharmacology and like, we can talk about receptors and bonding sites. But I feel the students really appreciated me and my very real world aspect to be like, this is a patient who's going to walk in. They're going to walk into the emergency department or they're going to walk into a community pharmacy. These are people who I've seen in real life. How can we actually help them? And as much as we can talk hypotheticals, I think it's just having that real person there. And I think that very much helped my teaching, back in 2017, 2018 when I first started, just to say, like, let's actually talk about the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that you seem to have a natural knack for education? Let me say that again. A real knack for education. I think I was trying to say mentoring and education in one word. And just talking to you, I can see that you're very easy to talk to, have a way of kind of articulating things in a way that people can understand. Is that something that you maybe like did experience when you were younger, or didn't experience when you were younger, or when you were going through your own degree and thought, oh, maybe I didn't have a good experience, so this is why I want to give back and do it better? Or is it just something that just comes natural to you?
So a bit of both. I think firstly it starts with working in a rural environment, having to learn very hands-on and very practical skills. So, if a farmer's teaching you, they're not going to give you a 15-minute demonstration. They're going to be like, I'm going to explain this once and good luck and off you go. But sort of leading on from that that especially within my student years, I had atrocious lecturers and atrocious mentors within the pharmacy setting. So, for example, I had a pharmacist. I used to do weekend work at a particular pharmacy, and she hated pharmacy and hated me.
Oh, wow. Okay, that would have been fun. Oh, my God.
It was not good in the slightest. So, flag labeling, like
Yes.
putting a flag. Yeah. So she said, "You're doing an atrocious job, Mitch. Keep in mind, I'm like a first year, so I don't know anything about anything, right?" She made me stand in the corner of the pharmacy for 4 hours one Sunday and just do flag labels.
Oh, my God. That sounds literally like a nightmare. Like, honestly, it could be better things you could be doing with your time, right?
But you start contemplating your life choices, being like, is this my life? Like, is this pharmacy? Is this me? And you'd ask her a question and be like, what's the difference between clotrimazole and terbinafine? And she's like, look it up. I'm like,
yes.
thank you so much for your so wonderful advice. I really appreciate this. But in saying that, because she was so hard, I learned more working with her for 6 months. Thankfully, that's as long as she lasted in that particular pharmacy than I did in the first 2 years of university, because she made me look up everything, because we actually had to have those super hard conversations. It really, spoke to the mentor that I wanted to be. So even when I'm teaching now, I love teaching, I love mentoring, just to have that light bulb moment, just to see when people actually, get the stuff, whether it's an intern, whether it's a first year, whether it's a, pharmacist who's been registered for 15 years. That's what I love to see, and that's what I get really passionate about.
I can just see that passion come through as you're talking, and I totally agree. I think probably most pharmacists that are throughout their career, they've had maybe experiences with people around them that maybe aren't that great, maybe not that inspiring, but it certainly can leave an impression on you, whether it's for the better or for worse, that even if it's just as, okay, well, I don't want to be like that. And so I know I've had similar situations too in the past, and I always try to make, especially when I was on placement. So I was actually really lucky that I had great jobs while I was working in pharmacy, while I was studying, but some of the placements I didn't have great experiences. And I just thought, I'm so lucky that this is not my rural experience. I'm working in a pharmacy, so I know that's not like everything, but there's some pharmacy students out there and that's all they experience for a couple of years. And I worry that, oh my gosh, they're going to see that and not want to continue. And so I always try and make it a point that when I have pharmacy students, I don't make them do cleaning or put stock away or stock take or something like that, because I think, oh my gosh, they're never going to actually finish their degree if this is their experience.
It's super hard, and even with somewhat of the big corporations taking over a lot of pharmacies these days, it's not even that there's not adequate pharmacists out there, but the students just don't have time to learn anything. If they're whacked on the schedules counter for 2 shifts and don't actually have any interaction with the pharmacist, you're not really creating those learning environments. But it's also the patients who are being impacted at the end of the day. If you're not actually having these conversations and they're not getting any better within themselves, we can only learn so much from lectures. We can only learn so much from tutorials. It's actually getting in there and, teaching the students to inspire the next generation, to help the people who can actually, they're the ones in need. They're the ones who are coming in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, knock the nail on the head right there. Now, Mitch, let's fast forward a little bit more to your role as a locum pharmacist. So the podcast sponsored by Ravens Recruitment. I've done a number of locum roles for them in the past and still do. And locuming can be really rewarding, but it can also be quite challenging as well. And so, Mitch, maybe you could just give us a bit of an understanding of what locum work looks like for you and why locuming is actually a good option for what you're doing in your career right now.
Yeah. So again, I don't know how much time we have, but let's just go for the whole long story, shall we? Why not? So in 2022, I was managing a pharmacy just north of Brisbane. I had COVID. We were still doing isolations at that point in time. So I was at home with COVID. I had to organise the locums. I had to organise pays and rosters and all of that sort of stuff, as I'm pretty unwell at home. And I just thought, enough's enough. The owner of the pharmacy is based in Victoria, so he couldn't come up with all of the isolation rules. And it was just me having to deal with it. And I just thought, enough's enough of having to deal with the KPIs, the budgets and all of that sort of stuff. So that's sort of take a bit of a holiday overseas. So I had a bit of a break, came back and just told a few people I was locuming. And then I told 2 or 3 people I was booked out for 6 months, which is pretty amazing.
Happens with being a locum, right? Especially if you're half decent, you tell 1 or 2 people, next thing you know, everyone is hitting you up.
Yeah, it's Christmas time and you're just it's February, what are we doing? Yeah. There's pros and cons about being a locum. And I'm sure a lot of other locums have told you that. The pay's great. The biggest thing that I'm finding as a con is the satisfaction. So being in a regular place, whether it's a hospital pharmacy, whether it's a community pharmacy, whatever it is, you're seeing regular customers for the most part. You're seeing regular people. You're seeing your interventions either work or not work. And you don't really get that as a locum unless you're doing like a month stint, or unless you're doing like a month on, month off, or unless you're doing like a 3-month stint somewhere. You're not really seeing those people come back. You're not building up the rapport. You're not building up those relationships, which is super hard. So it's a big sort of catch-22 for me, being like, I love locuming. I love the diversity. I love knowing every day can be somewhere different. I love going to the small little rural pharmacies in, central Queensland or central New South Wales. And like, they're the real people that I like actually talking to. And dispensing systems are dispensing systems, no matter where you are. And people are people, and drugs are drugs. And, we can travel anywhere as pharmacists around Australia and work. And that's super exciting. But it's just sort of weighing up for me what's most important at this point in time. So it's sort of weighing up like the satisfaction or the limited satisfaction I get versus the pay that I'm sort of getting. And thankfully, I sort of supplement that satisfaction with other things. So like I teach and I lecture, which is pretty amazing. And I also do HMRs on the side, which is cool. So I get that full sit-down conversation with people. And I know you don't get like the repeat HMRs, typically speaking, but it's actually building a genuine connection with someone, which is what I miss out on when I'm working full-time somewhere.
No, that makes complete sense. And I can definitely relate to that as well. I feel like now just managing my own workload, now I've got kind of a set few pharmacies that I will do like regular locums where I go back to, and some of the customers there are now like starting to like remember me, and they're like, oh, so when are you coming back again? And so I actually did one in Orange, and I was mainly just doing flu vaccines, to be honest, because it's coming into that season. They're like, oh, when will you be back? I'm like, probably this time next year, so I'll do your flu shot for you next year when I'm back.
It's super interesting, especially when you have like a very recognizable face like mine, like being bald and having a beard, and people will just recognize you anywhere. And like, that's him. That's my pharmacist. I'm like, where are you looking? What's happening? And it's like, it's super weird when people recognize you based on that 30-second experience or that 2-minute experience when you're getting a flu shot or whatever it is. And people remember you for that. But that's what I really love about the profession, being like, people trust you and people will respect you for those conversations.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, it's one of those things that you probably don't realize the impact that you have on people, right? Like, they're just one of maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of maybe people you've seen in a day. But for them, like, you are the one pharmacist that they've come to see, so they do remember that. Yeah, and sometimes they remember the good stuff and the bad stuff as well. Not always perfect, but it's how you deal with those kind of situations. I'd love to chat to you now a little bit more about some of the things that you face when you are a locum. And there's some really great things that you can see how different people approach different workflows and things like that. Like, I love going into different pharmacies, and even within the same banner group, it can be so different, which I find hilarious because you would think it's the same. And half the time it's, the variations between the same banner group stores, you can pick up these real gems of like, oh, wow, they do this. This is a really great idea. Like, one pharmacy I was at, when you go to a pathology place and you get the numbers, they were doing that for their flu vaccine clinic. Super simple, but my gosh, it worked. But there can also sometimes be, I guess, not necessarily negative, but maybe dilemmas that you face as a locum. You've been locuming for a while, so I'm sure you've probably got a whole handful of these type of stories. But could you maybe talk, to the listeners a little bit about maybe some of those ethical dilemmas that maybe you see the most? And for people that are thinking about becoming a locum, how can they actually navigate these situations?
There are so many ethical dilemmas. I think the most important part, especially when approaching a lot of those things, is who are you as a pharmacist? Like, what are you willing to, like, where are you drawing the line personally and professionally? Like, at the end of the day, we have our insurance providers. They're fantastic. But if it's 5 o'clock on a Sunday and someone's coming and being like, I need Target, and you're just like, what are we actually doing in this circumstance?
Of course you go straight for that one, right? So true.
Well, there are lots worse. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yes.
I suppose I could tell you about one. Well, actually, I will for the sake of the listeners. I was locuming at this, I'm not going to say which pharmacy, but a very bad pharmacy for the sake of the conversation. They didn't really care. So they're very business orientated. They weren't customer orientated, which I think is a very big difference. So even between banner groups, depending on where the owners are situated, or depending on even where the manager's situated, like, are they customer focused or are they business focused? That's a very big question, sort of when you're walking in anywhere. What's happening? Who's the priority in the store? Are the staff the priority or are the customers the priority? It's a very big question. The staff get their lunch breaks. Are they angry come 2 p.m. because, they haven't had a cup of tea all day? Like, that's a very interesting question when you're walking in. But sort of back to the really bad ethical case. So I was doing this weekend shift, like, as a favour to the retail manager at the time, because I knew her from another pharmacy. Their top 2 sellers of this particular pharmacy were cannabis and Ricodine, which sort of sets the scene for the pharmacy somewhat. And before I walked in, like, I didn't have any real communication with anyone. They're just like, yep, rock up this weekend. Here are the keys. Someone's going to let you in. Happy days. Which is, it's pretty expected for a lot of pharmacy gigs.
That's just typical locum life in some ways.
Yeah.
Good luck even if you get keys too sometimes.
Sometimes you just rock up and like, I don't know anything about anything. Hopefully someone has a key or a code or an alarm. If not, it's great. Like, thankfully Ravens or other companies are really good giving you a lot of background details to be like, this is your average strip count per day. Do they do methadone? Do they not? Do you have any texts on? Like, that sort of information is super helpful when you walk in. And even as like a private locum, so to speak, it's just like, it's good to have some sort of basis before you walk in. Be like, what am I expecting?
Yes, it's very helpful.
So this particular pharmacy, like, it was a Sunday afternoon at this point, and I already had a super interesting weekend. This lovely lady came in. She's like, I'm here for my cannabis. I'm like, you got it yesterday. She's like, yeah, but I don't have a limit. I'm like, clearly says in the script that you have like a 3-day limit. And I had a look, and she had 48 tubs of 15 grams that month. And she's like, oh, but I'm going through it. I'm really depressed. I'm like, let's actually have a genuine conversation. Like, you're not Snoop Dogg Love, unfortunately. Like, you're not having like 30 grams of cannabis per day. Like, what's actually happening with your mental health? Like, but it provided a much deeper conversation, being like, other pharmacists are more than happy to supply this. They may or may not have contacted doctors. Let's give them benefit of the doubt for the sake of the conversation. I'm not too sure. But in that situation, it's like, how's the patient actually feeling? Are they just medicating themselves with medicine just for the sake of their condition? Or are they actually actively looking for help? Like, what's actually happening? But at least that conversation be provided. Like, that person walked away happy, knowing they couldn't get their medication that day. Because I'm like, talk to your doctor tomorrow. Today's a Sunday. I can't call anyone. But they actually said, okay, like, thank you so much for actually listening to my concerns as a person, because no one else had done it beforehand. So, like, even when you're situating yourself as a pharmacist, you still need to ask yourself, who am I as a person? Who am I as a pharmacist? Like, where am I going to draw the line to actually help these people? Is it a conversation? Do I need to call mental health services? Do I need to call, like, paramedics? Like, how acute is the situation? How can we still help them at the end of the day?
Pharmacy Daily is a proud supporter of your pharmacy career podcast. If you're in the pharmacy world, it's a great resource to stay up to date with the latest industry news. To subscribe, just head to pharmacydaily.com.au to get the newsletter delivered straight to your inbox.
I think that is a really powerful story, and that could have gone a number of different ways, right? You could have just flat out said, like, absolutely not, get the hell out, and that would have completely changed that relationship and maybe that person's trust in the healthcare system. But you essentially declined supply, but she walked away feeling like you'd helped her, which is really amazing. So as opposed to just treating them like they're like drug-seeking people, because majority of them, they do have genuine ailments or conditions or things that need to be treated. That's why they're there. I mean, it's much easier to get this sort of stuff on the street than it is through a pharmacy and doctors. So let's be honest, if they wanted to do that, they would be doing it elsewhere. So I think that's a really powerful kind of takeaway message that, what type of person do you want to be? You can still abide by your own, first of all, from the legal requirements, but then also your own, I guess, values as well, by you still helping that person, but you're still not crossing any lines there.
Yeah, of course. And that's what I think the biggest thing is, even for the people listening, to say, you're going to walk into these environments. You have no idea what you're going to walk into. And even if you think like there's a relatively safe pharmacy, for lack of a better word, you still don't know who's going to be coming in that day. But it's up to you as your own person to say, how can I help them? Or how can we even compromise on this healthcare journey that they're on?
Oh, absolutely. I think this conversation is kind of leading now more towards like the mental health aspect of pharmacy, not only just from a patient-pharmacist interaction, but even yourself. So even being put into that situation can sometimes, I know it will cause me a bit of anxiety having to go and give people the news that they don't want to hear. Now I'm much more confident in saying no and telling people where to go if I need to. But I know especially early on in my career, if I had to be that pharmacist to go out and decline supply or give someone news that they didn't want to. It would scare the living daylights out of me. I was so nervous. And I'm only a little person. Half the time, like, you can't even see me if I'm behind the dispensary. So sometimes, yeah, the people you're going out to can be a bit intimidating. And so I think you also mentioned like what's going on in that pharmacy, like other staff getting their lunch break. So they're having cups, like being able to go and have a 10-minute break. And it's funny, I see some pharmacies in my experience, and they can be very to the T of you can only have a 10-minute break, and like it's only half an hour if you're 1 minute late. Like, oh my gosh, like, which I do understand, like I can understand, but at the same time, what type of culture is that leading? And I don't know, it frustrates me when you've got to go and get your lunch, you're heating up your food, and the microwave's like 100 years old, so it takes 15 minutes to heat up your lunch. And then you've got to eat it in like 5 seconds. It's not really creating a very supportive place. But I think this is a good time to kind of delve into maybe what you believe can be the role of pharmacy in mental health. And I know that is a huge, huge question, and we could probably have a whole series of podcasts dedicated to that one topic. But maybe we can talk about it from, like looking after your own mental health, but then also the mental health of your staff and patients. Or you can come up with something else if you like.
Do you mind if I share a mental health related HMR story, and then we can circle back to your questions? I feel that'd be really helpful. No?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So about 6 months ago, give or take, I had 2 back-to-back HMRs on a Sunday afternoon. One was at 4 o'clock, one was at 5:30. The 5:30 one was like a favour to the doctor. They gave me a call at about 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, being like, hey, this patient's suicidal. We really want to look at like different antidepressants and antipsychotics for them. Can you see them ASAP for review? Yep, that's easy. I got that. Like, as long as the patient can last through the weekend, like that's completely okay. But like, I'm very aware of that situation when I walk in. The 4 o'clock one, I tend not to really like look at the referrals too much these days because all of the medications are 5 years out of date. There's those one antibiotics that the doctors have never bothered to take off the meds list, like all of that sort of stuff. So I tend not to look at the referrals really in depth. So all I really knew was the patient, the mum, she had dementia. The daughter was looking after her. Yeah, that's all I really knew. So I get there. 4 o'clock, mum's walking around. She has no idea what day of the week it is. Like, she's very late stage dementia. And I asked the daughter, I asked the carer, I'm just like, how's mum? Very open question. We can interpret it any way you want. And the daughter said, yeah, I'm going to kill her tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And then, it's 4 o'clock on a Sunday, right? It then shifts your entire perspective. Being like, I can't call the doctor. This is what's generally going to happen. Like, we're not having a joking manner here. Like, some people be like, oh, like, you can, like, this wasn't a joking situation. And then it really puts into perspective being like, the diabetes that the patient had doesn't matter. The hypertension the patient had doesn't matter. So, I still went through the other medications anyway because I was there. Not that they were any significant or importance. And the carer kept saying, oh, can you take the patient with you? Can you take them with you? Otherwise, this will definitely happen. I'm like, I generally can't. I can't drop them off to a nursing home. I can't drop them off to the hospital. Like, I can't do any of that. I have to go and see this patient afterwards who's suicidal, and it's a lot of pressure on you as the pharmacist in that situation, right? So I sort of wrapped up everything fairly quickly. So it was only about half an hour, which is pretty short for a HMR. But I'm like, the biggest concern here is not hypertension. The biggest concern is not diabetes. The biggest concern is the patient will not live to see Tuesday. Like, that's just fact. So sort of to wrap up that conversation, went outside, drove up a few Ks. Again, another rural HMR. This one was, thankfully I called PDL and I'm like, please help me. What do I do? And they were super fantastic. Like, if you're ever in doubt, please just call your insurance providers. Like, that's what they're there for. Please just call them. And they just said, best thing you can do now, just call the ambulance and like just get her out of that situation. So I gave the ambulance a call and they said, do we need police? What's the whole situation looking like? And I'm like, I personally didn't feel threatened, but this is the situation. I generally felt this was a large concern here. This is sort of how we're looking. So the paramedics came, took the patient to the hospital, and then later a nursing home to sort of just take that pressure off the carer. And like, whenever I think about mental health, that's the case that I think about. Being like, it wasn't just the patient, it wasn't just the carer who was obviously a massive burden of mental health. And like, we don't want to be those people. But it was then me afterwards being like, okay, I've now got half an hour to drive to my next HMR to a gentleman who I know is suicidal. Like, how do you keep yourself in that mindset? And it's a great question that you ask. Like, what do you do with mental health in those cases? Who do you reach out to? Is it family? Is it friends? Do you go to the gym and just like let out all your frustration? Like what do you do here? And it's a super important thing. Yeah, it's so interesting. And thankfully he was okay. Thankfully I didn't have to call the ambulance for him because emotionally I just wasn't up to it that day. And thankfully he was very receptive to talking about different antidepressant types and, his journey so far, which was really good overall. Yeah, like that was good. But just sort of relating it back to like the pharmacy question, as she said, I guess there's two people we can really think about when we think about mental health. Is it the patient or is it the staff members? Is it, having an extra 2 minutes to enjoy your hot cup of tea? Or how can we actually look at this from a patient point of view when people come to the pharmacy? We do meds checks. We do diabetes meds checks. Why can't we do mental health meds checks? Like, there are so many herbs and supplements out there, and especially with the information that we have at our fingertips, like with My Health Record, assuming there's consent, of course, people are hopefully getting somewhat regular blood tests. We can sort of pick up like a lot of the things there. And there's very clear evidence-based guidelines for like a lot of over-the-counter stuff before we even get to scripts. And I'm not saying like overstep by any means or diagnose by any means. Like, I'm not saying any of that. But like, there's very good evidence for saffron or for St. John's wort or for B12 or, iron deficiency you can link to, lethargy and things like that. So why, as pharmacists, can't we start having those conversations with patients? Why can't we sit down at consult rooms and have those conversations? If it's Medicare funded, if it's privately funded, like, why can't we start having those conversations with people?
Great question. And I wouldn't really know how to answer that straight away off the top of my head as to why. But I think maybe the one thing that people can do is, there's a saying, and I'm trying to remember it. It's like, not everyone can change the world, but one person, I don't know, I can't remember the exact what it is, but it's basically saying that like one person can do one action and then that will have a flow-on effect. Yeah, I wish I could actually remember it. Anyway, I'll remember and I'll pop it in the show notes for those that are going to want to know what that quote is. Yeah, I think the purpose of that is like, why aren't we doing it? Is that, well, maybe rather than waiting for it to be like a full-on service or like, oh, you have to get paid for it, it's just like, well, what can you do as one person? And what you can do as one person is, just look at the person in front of you and look at them with a little bit more empathy. And I know when it's really busy and you're working in a pharmacy that's like doing 600, 700, 800 scripts a day. There's even pharmacists I know of that are doing like over 1,000 scripts a day, and it's just hectic. But remember, when people are coming into the pharmacy, it's not because they're well. Like, there's usually something going on. And so just trying to remember that. And I know for me, when it is really busy and I could feel myself not maybe being as patient as what I could be, that's when I'm like, okay, I need to just go for like a walk. And I know when you're in a pharmacy, like, where can you walk to? But sometimes there might be just like literally just walking out the back for 5 minutes or a couple of minutes and just kind of clearing your head. Yeah. Taking the moment to, if maybe one of your staff members has had a conversation with someone that's quite deep or has experienced maybe some aggression or something like that, just giving them 5 seconds or 5 minutes just to go sit out the back, collect your thoughts. And, even if it's busy, like, they'll wait. So maybe there's just little things that you can do as a single person, to try and make a little bit more of a difference.
And I think it really links back to what you're saying a few minutes ago, being like, the insignificant moments for us are really significant for people. Being like, that one person who's coming in and you're counseling on amoxicillin because they're unwell. They're going to remember that. But even people starting on like SSRIs, like, it doesn't matter if they've had a half-an-hour consult with their doctor, whether they're already seeing a psychologist. It's those few minutes or even those 10 minutes you're spending with someone actually generally going through everything. They're the moments that can generally help people. And then looking back to us as healthcare professionals, it's really hard, and it's hard to like let go of the massive burden that we have and just take it all home. And it's very hard to like de-stress and take away everything and take on, because we're taking on so much like emotion from everyone else we're seeing throughout the day. It's a super busy pharmacy. You're dispensing 800 scripts a day, or you're checking scripts, and there's Webster pack problems, and there's 50 flu shots you have to do, and like, that's a normal day for a lot of community pharmacists. And it's like, how do you rewind, or how do you unwind at the end of the day? And how do you debrief everything?
Yeah, and sometimes even too is one of the biggest things that I love to do is just give patients realistic time expectations on how long things are going to take. And I know it's such a small thing to do, but I find, especially like when I do locums and stuff like that, is when I hear like, oh, it'll just be a couple of minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, do not ever say that. So I just find by giving those realistic expectations, like be 10 or so minutes or so, or if it is really busy, look, it's going to be about half an hour. We're under the pump. Our pharmacist hasn't had had lunch yet. So it's just going to be a little bit of a wait. And I find that 99.9% of the time when you're honest like that and your staff are honest and the customers and patients they understand. They're like, oh, okay, sure, I'll come back later, or it's okay, I'll just sit and wait. And I remember this cute old couple, they had nowhere else to be, so they just sat there and we kept like, do you want a cup of tea or anything? And they were quite happy to sit and wait. And so I think sometimes too we put pressure on ourselves that we don't need to, that we have to be like super fast. Like, I mean, I don't know if anyone went and ordered fish and chips on Good Friday, but I mean, my local area, it was like an hour and a half wait for fish and chips. People didn't care. They're like, oh, okay, that's fine. I mean, they're welcome. If they're okay to wait an hour and a half for fish and chips, surely they can wait 10 minutes for a script.
Yeah, it's a super important conversation as well. And being like, it's all well and good if you want to be that, stoic, heroic pharmacist and work through your lunch breaks. But at what cost is that happening? Like, it's not just like the potential risk for the patients. It's also for your own mental health as well. Like, whether it is just going for a small walk around the pharmacy, whether it's like just jumping out the back and doom scrolling TikTok for 5 minutes. It's just being that circuit breaker, being like, I'm just taking 5 minutes for me. And if a customer waits 5 minutes for another script, like, it's not the end of the world. No doubt they've waited longer than 5 minutes to see the doctor, then they've travelled to the pharmacy, then they've handed the script in. All of that's taken longer than 5 minutes. So you taking 5 minutes yourself is more important.
Absolutely. I'd like to maybe turn to a positive question, and that's, you've done so much in your career, there's probably a lot that we haven't even scratched the surface of yet, but this question I think will be able to maybe catch on some of the things that we haven't talked about. But what's some of the career-defining moments that you're most proud of in your career to date?
Yeah, super hard question, super important question, so thank you for that. I look back at my career so far, and yes, I've got a few different degrees, and yes, I do a whole bunch of different stuff in my spare time. I think standing up for myself as a pharmacist and treating myself for what I should be and what I am worth sort of defines who I am these days. And I sort of, you get offered locum gigs around the place, and you look at the wage and it's much less than, like, it's about par for like award rate for pharmacists. And I'm like, it's not the fact that I'm booked out for months. It's not the fact that I do H miles for teaching or anything like that. I know who I am as a pharmacist. I know what I'm worth. And to step away from like sort of full-time positions where I was employed, like during COVID, and like great pharmacies, and you learn a lot, and you're really part of like an awesome team and all of those sort of things. It's stepping aside to be like, I know what I want to be. I don't want to be in a massive corporate store for the rest of my life. I don't want to be achieving KPIs for somewhere else. I want to be helping the people who generally come in. And I think that's one of the biggest highlights of me, being like, I can do all of these amazing things. And I can teach at different places, and I can speak at conferences. And I'm super proud of all of those moments. And I think we should be. Like, it's not just the one degree that we all have all hanging on the wall. Like that's something to be proud of, but it's saying who I am as a person. It's to be able to say no to different opportunities when they come up. I think it's a fantastic thing to sit back and be like, no, I don't want to do that shift in December. No, it's not worth my time to fly 12 hours to do one shift, no matter how much you're paying me. Like, it's to stand up for yourself and for who you believe in, I think, is the biggest achievement that I've seen myself progress with so far.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a very deep answer. It's not what I thought you were going to say, that's for sure. I've got some note for those that are listening, got some notes here. And I honestly thought that you were going to talk about the Facebook Live mental health sessions that you ran during COVID. But I think what you said was, really, really inspiring. Much better, in fact.
Yeah, that would have redirected me so much better if I actually looked at the notes I sent you before. Like, because you brought it up, I might as well talk about it now.
Yes.
For the people who don't know too much about me, during COVID, I was working in a pharmacy just west of Brisbane. And one of the pharmacy owners' really amazing ideas was to have like regular Facebook Live sessions for people who didn't want to leave the house, or for people who still wanted to catch up with like health-related news, but didn't want to obviously listen to the news because all that time was just COVID stuff. So I teamed up with a local psychologist and we did a Facebook Live session. And for those who haven't done a Facebook Live session, it's super awkward, it's super clunky, and you sort of get there. And there's a very great analogy that I can make, but I'm definitely not for the sake of this podcast. But it was so good because we actually had that very open and honest conversation, be like, let's talk about mental health as a whole. And that was something that I never thought my pharmacy career would ever take me to do, which is absolutely amazing. Like, to do like an open event where we can actively talk, and allied healthcare professions, being like a pharmacist and a psychologist together, just answering questions to the public. And like those sort of events, I never thought my career would take me there.
That's really cool and also really scary. I've done Facebook Live accidentally. and it's terrifying. So well done.
And the shit advertise, like, you don't know who's going to log on, you don't know what questions are going to get asked, and it's not like a structured thing. And you're just like, oh, this is so weird and awkward, but you get there and you get the job done, right?
I love it. Really, really good. Well, thank you for covering that for our listeners. Appreciate it. You've done so much in your career, Mitch, and I feel like you've still got so much more to give and do. What do you think is next for you?
That's a fantastic question.
Who knows?
I'm not sure. I'm very one of those like goal-driven people to be like, what's next? Who's the next person we can help? What's the next bit of information we can do? And it's very hard when you're so goal-driven and you have so much spare time, because I have so much at the moment.
Yes.
But it's like, what's next? It's like, we've ticked off GP pharmacy work. We're working towards our credentialing with diabetes educator sort of stuff. I've done some, HMI accredited, done some sort of stuff in terms of like natural medicines and naturopathy. So like dabbled in that sort of area as well. And it's very much of like, oh, what's next? And to be frankly honest, I have no idea. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see where pharmacy takes us. I'm so excited to see where pharmacy takes everyone else as well. Like, it's not just GP pharmacy. It's not just hospital pharmacy or nursing home pharmacy or HMRs. Like, is it private practice we're going into? Is it mental health related things we're going into? Like, where is the limit for pharmacists? Like, is it teaching? Like, I've held so many different jobs or even like casual positions over like my 9 years being a pharmacist. But I'm so excited to see what's next for everyone. In terms of me, I have no idea. We'll just throw all the cards up in the air and see what falls, right?
I love it. And do you know what? I think that's the best. And for those that are listening that maybe they're still studying, or maybe they've been in their career for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years and want to do something different. I think the fact that now with pharmacy, it's so exciting that you can pretty much create your own path a little bit, and create your own adventure, that there's so many different opportunities out there. And yeah, like sitting here today, 2025, like when I first started in pharmacy back in 2008, I think was my first pharmacy job. Like that pharmacy, like the most innovative thing they were doing was blood pressure and weight loss. Like weighing, like that was like, whoa. But now look at where we are. Gosh, yeah, pretty excited to see the next 15 or so years. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us. I know we didn't cover everything in your career, but it's been a really, really good discussion. And yeah, thank you.
It's the very least I can do. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly sponsored by the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. The PSA is committed to empowering pharmacists through advocacy, innovation, and industry-leading professional development. To become a member or learn more about how the PSA can support your career, visit www.psa.org.au. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your colleagues, and join us next time as we continue to explore your pharmacy career journey.